and welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me, of course, is my beautiful co-host Laraib as we break down Week 9 of the NFL season. We are officially at the halfway point. Teams are we're starting to move off the bye weeks. About half the teams have reached their byes, and like we talk about, every single week we get a clearer and clearer picture of how this season's going to end up. And then there's still upsets. There's still surprises. That's what makes this sport amazing and so fun to watch and cover, Laraib. So what did you think about last week's games in general?
Yeah, it was another great slate. I know even with the 6 teams on bye, still a lot of great football to watch. Still only 2 games in the 3 o'clock window, so that's a little disappointing to see. But my Seahawks were up there in prime time, I guess. And so that was awesome to see, Lewis. So why don't we segue ourselves into the picks real quick? For the first time this season, we have a tie. It was really my fault because I picked Green Bay as my lock. I said, Detroit, the Packers just own Detroit. And boom, that was just a huge L for me. Seahawks over Arizona was really the difference. And so, Tennessee almost pulled up off the upset last night. We'll talk about the game in a little bit, but 8-8 for both of us, Lewis. How are you feeling?
I'm not too upset in my upset, honestly. I know Chicago lost, but it was a really good game. They played well, and it was a 3-point loss that they had the ball in the fourth quarter. They just couldn't get things going offensively. And we'll get to it, but I'm not picking the Cardinals again. Just saying that. At least not against the Seahawks. They don't play again, but that was definitely an error in my part. I let the Vegas odds get to me, and but that won't happen again. I feel like I'm starting to get my mojo back. This was the sign to kind of get me out of my rut a little bit to where I can start getting back into things. Tampa Bay lock. It was close, but Tom Brady, the GOAT, pulled it out like everyone knew he would, and that's what secured me the win for the week, Laraib. So let's go ahead. This is where we normally go into our Seattle, New Orleans corner. The Saints play tonight when we're filming this. So we're filming this before Monday Night Football. So we will give you the analysis on that game on our Thursday episode. So unfortunately, no Saints content. All I know now is a lot of players missing on both teams. It's gonna be a fun game in New Orleans. We both picked Baltimore, and I really want the Saints to win. I'll say that. I'm not going against my pick, but I really want the Saints to win. But let's stick, Laraib, with your Seahawks. Another great win for Seattle. What were your biggest takeaways from the game?
Well, the biggest thing for me, Lewis, was, after Geno Smith threw that pick 6 in the third quarter, what he does? He goes on 3 straight scoring drives. And so, the adversity that this team, can overcome is great to see. We were down at many different points in the game, and just being able to claw back was awesome to see. The rushing attack has just been awesome this year with Kenneth Walker. We've seen the Seahawks in the years past try to hammer the ball down opponents' throats, and they just haven't been able to get going since Marshawn Lynch left. But now to have Kenneth Walker back there, somebody who's really, really quick, but also a tough runner, really just embodies the style that we have on offense. And then on defense, I thought we were going to get exposed a little bit from D-Hop and Rondell Moore, and they certainly got their licks in, but this defense was able to hold them tight, get 5 sacks on Kyler Murray this game. And so, all around, just another great performance from my Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, it gets more and more impressive as the weeks go on. You start thinking this is a team that's legitimate. And like you said, for a team where you don't really trust the quarterback that much going into the season, and a lot of people still kind of have their wait, it's Geno Smith we're talking about. We're still talking about Geno Smith at quarterback. Yet he keeps on just playing his brand of football, and he's winning these games. Like you said, the adversity to come back down from throwing a pick 6 on the first play of the drive, then to go on 3 straight scoring possessions and basically put the game away, speaks to his character and to this team's kind of just composition as a whole, for them to just stay in that game on the road and win a tough divisional game that I picked against him. So very surprised. Shout out to our boy Tariq Woolen, of, as always, locking up D-Hop whenever he was on him. And I'm expecting the same against Mike Evans, even in Germany next week. But we'll get to that one when we go to our predictions. Anything else in Seattle you want to hit on before we move on?
No, like we've mentioned, they have a couple tests coming up, Lewis, and we'll see how they fare in those games. but I'm really excited. You know, I feel like I'll be picking this team in every single game moving forward for the rest of the year,
Yeah,
Lewis. Even against the
that's been
Tampa
the dip.
Bay, even against the Chiefs, you know, I believe in this team.
That's been the difference in our picks the last few weeks. I've been not believing in the team, and they've been making me, eat it. So, I'll definitely keep that into consideration moving forward. But Laraib, let's move on to Sunday night's game, the Chiefs and the Titans. It was a close game. Chiefs win by a field goal in overtime, even being 12.5-point favorites going into the game. They were your upset, Laraib. So I ask you, was your biggest takeaway from the game the Chiefs being able to win just any type of game? Or was it more the Titans just impressing you that they can stay in a game like this?
You know, Lewis, I really have to lean towards the Titans. You just think about offensively, the weapons that they have. It's just Derrick Henry out there. The receivers that they're lacking all across the board. You had rookie quarterback Malik Willis go out there in his second ever start, and for them to hang in with this, Chiefs team who we believe are Super Bowl contenders, it was really impressive to see. Mike Vrabel, he's been coaching his ass off, to be quite frank, for the past couple years, for this Tennessee Titans organization. When they're missing players everywhere, and he's still able to, they don't win this game, but to go into Arrowhead and into that hostile environment and take into overtime and only lose by 3, I think it was really, really a great outing from the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, and to think they didn't get a single first down in the entire second half of that game. It was just tough defense, never quitting on that. That defense was so impressive. That defensive line got after Patrick Mahomes. They were covering their butts off the entire time. Travis Kelce wasn't able to get those easy completions across the middle. He had to fight for every single completion. And that's what this Titans team is under Mike Vrabel. They make you feel them every single possession. It will never be an easy game. There was that weird just Buffalo buzzsaw game early in the season. But when it comes down to December and January football, this is the team and this is the coach that you want to be on and you want to play for, because they play hard, tough-nosed football. And honestly, Rob, if Ryan Tannehill plays in this game, I think the Titans win. Just the way that game was flowing, if they can just get a few first downs here and there, just enough to get field goals on some of those possessions where you had really good field possession, I think they win this game. But I also want to give a huge shout out to Kansas City. Yes, it was a home game. Yes, you were huge favorites, but the way that game played, you were getting nothing on offense. That defense was locking up. And it's just Patrick Mahomes, it seemed like he could get nothing going in the passing game despite throwing for 400 yards. They just couldn't get consistent drives. But when he needed points and he needed to score, he used his legs. He used every down necessary, and he got them points. Just his will to win, his will to succeed. I mean, the way the NFL is shaping up, if you don't have him, you need a pretty perfect team to go up against him, because if you want to consider yourself a contender, you need to have 15 or something close to it, because there's not a lot like him in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure, Lewis. And this is one of those games why, this is why you fall in love with football, right? These 12-point underdogs going into the Lions Den, and these two teams battling it out. You see the coaching genius out of both of these head coaches. I'm trying to adjust to the game script, trying to adjust to, how the defense is going to counter, how the offense is going to counter. Is these type of games that, we really enjoy to see the matchups from both sides. And just an awesome game on Sunday Night Football, which a lot of people thought would be, a blowout. And so, so the Titans, they lose this game, but they're still going to win their division. We'll talk about the Colts and them losing Frank Reich in a little bit, but you still have high hopes for this Tennessee Titans team, like you mentioned. When it gets into those December, January games, you like that tough running football. And then for the Chiefs, a great win, still right up there with the Bills, for the tie, number 1 team in the AFC.
Yeah, and speaking of the AFC, let's pivot over to the AFC East, where last week when we did our top 5 teams, we both had Buffalo as our number 1 team. They lose on the road at the Jets. And now in that division, all 4 teams are above 500. The Jets, Dolphins, and Bills all have 6 wins. The Patriots are at 5 and 4, Laraib. So this is a division in which, last week when we were talking about, we did not think this Jets team could sustain, and they had a really tough schedule. They still have a really tough schedule, But did this game give you any confidence that the Jets can be a playoff team?
That's really tough to answer, Lewis. They win in a close game. But the thing is, I still do not like what I saw out of Zach Wilson. They were able to put up 20 points. I think that the bigger thing in this game was just how bad that Josh Allen played. And like you mentioned, the Jets' schedule going forward, they have a lot of tough teams to play against. But sitting there at 6-3 is a great record to have. But I'm not, I lack the confidence in Zach Wilson. I'll leave you with this question, Lewis. Do we feel like the AFC East is the best division in football right now?
I think top to bottom, yes, because I still believe in this Bills team. I just think it was one of those road divisional games. And which, and I talked about this in the predictions, that these road divisional games, no matter who the team is, no matter who the favorite is, they get weird, they get ugly. There's things that don't normally happen that we're used to. And that showed for the Bills. And I still think they are the cream of the crop. Now, Josh Allen suffered some type of hand injury or UCL, like shoulder, elbow injury. I'm not exactly sure. I hope that's not too serious for him because he is literally the engine of that team, and he did not play well on Sunday against the Jets, Laraib. But just to talk about this Jets team in general, that defense has been so good this season. Just the rookies stepping up, and they have such a banged up offensive line. They lose their best, rookie running back. They lose a great offensive lineman, Elijah Vera Tucker, and they're still finding ways to stay in and win these, tough divisional games. But can they sustain that? And the biggest question is, can Zach Wilson be the engine of that? Now, I did like what I saw from the running game with James Robinson, Michael Carter kind of going back and forth, sustaining some drives down the field. But they really benefited off turnovers. And if you don't get those turnovers, you're not winning a lot of these games if it's just straight up offense versus offense, in which I just, Garrett Wilson seemed to have a lot better connection with Zach Wilson in this game. But can they sustain this? It's a big question. And like you said, the schedule, I'm just going to list off a few of these games. I do not think they have not a chance. Of course, they can win any of these games, but games that they're going to be heavy underdogs in. At New England next week, you have at Minnesota, at Buffalo, at Seattle, at Miami. Those are 5 road games against teams that are significantly better than them. And, the other 3 home games, fortunately, are against the Bears, Lions, and Jaguars, that you should win. But can 9-8 record, can that get you a playoff berth in this competitive AFC? I'm not sure it can, Laraib. And, you look at some of the other teams that are vying for those wild card spots, the Bengals, we're talking about the Dolphins and the Patriots in that same division, the Chargers in the AFC West. Like, there's a lot of teams vying for those spots that don't have gauntlets like that. So I think that this is a young team and they're making great strides right now. And who knows, maybe Zach Wilson kind of gets, as the defense is playing well, he just plays quarterback manager and he gets a lot smarter at the position, kind of like how a Mark Sanchez was with the Jets back in 2010. And if he can do that, this team can be competitive with a really good defense. But I don't think their defense is that great just yet for me to think that they're a lock to be a playoff team.
Right. And you think about, this is the worst game Josh Allen has played this season by far, and you're only able to scrape by this game by a field goal. And so you think about how bad they played, and, this is supposed to be their coming out game, and, the defense balls out, but you're only able to put up 20 points offensively. And so, great win, close game, you're able to battle it out against a divisional opponent. But going forward, like you mentioned, it's going to be a lot tougher. You're facing Bill Belichick in New England, right? It's going to be a lot tougher when you're in Seattle and the 12th man is roaring and Zach Wilson is, inside his own 20-yard line, has to go on a game-winning drive.
No chance. So, no chance.
So we'll see what this team is really made of. Like you mentioned, young players. We'll see what type of mettle they have, Lewis, going forward for the rest of the season. And like you mentioned, that battle is going to be really, really tight for the last couple seeds in the AFC playoffs. And we'll see, Lewis. We'll see.
Now, do you think, Laura, before we move on, how many teams can you see coming out of this division in the playoffs? Because obviously, Buffalo, I think, is a lock. But those next 3 teams, because we had a debate 2 weeks ago before that horrific Monday Night Football game with the Patriots that we thought they were the team to get in alongside Miami. Do you still think that's the case? Or do you think maybe the Jets supplant the Patriots, or we only have 2 teams in that division? Because I personally think that Miami is also a lock for the playoffs. They've been playing fantastic football. And I don't know. Do you feel the same way, or do you
I
think maybe
definitely
another
agree
team
with
can
you.
supplant them?
Two teams are the Bills and the Dolphins, in my opinion. I agree with you. Those teams are definitely a lock to get to make it the playoffs. Now, I think it's going to come down to this Patriots team. And this, I can't rule out all four of these teams making it in. To be honest, like we said, the Chargers they've been up and down. They eke out a win. The
God.
Bengals have been up and down as well. And so it's not far fetched to say that all four of these teams could sneak in. I think at least three will make it, at least three, but definitely two.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out. I think three, if I had to put money, I think three will make it out. I'm not going to say we will which out of the Patriots and Jets because I think the Patriots win next week, in New England against the Jets. But we'll see what happens, Laraib. It's gonna be super interesting. But it's time to move on to a more somber note. We
Bring out the
witnessed a funeral.
violence.
Bring out the Ave Maria. This was a team that had high aspirations this year. We both thought that they were maybe not going to be the team, but a team with a revamped defense, a veteran quarterback. And no, I'm not talking about the Rams, but we could be talking about them. I am talking about the Green Bay Packers, who lose on the road to the 1-win, now 2-win Detroit Lions. The worst defense in the NFL, and the Lions only allowed 9 points to the Green Bay Packers, in which Aaron Rodgers had 3 interceptions, and they were all bad. And the Lions beat the Packers. Can we put them to rest now, Laura?
Well, Lewis, we'll have a segment coming up where we cross off some of these playoff teams, and I guess I'm tipping my hand on this one, but I think they're done, Lewis. Rodgers, he looked washed. Quite honestly, those, like you mentioned, those interceptions are just straight up horrendous. And I'm throwing a party over here, Lewis. I think you're doing the same over there. We couldn't be happier for this guy to just be playing terribly. We know the sort of front running that Aaron Rodgers does. Whenever things are going great, he's out there, big smile on his face. But now when things are looking rough, he's packing it in. Got his head down on the sidelines, and it's just awesome to see, Lewis, quite frankly. And just the disconnect that the head coach and the quarterback have, it's awesome to see. I mean, I'm sure the Packers fans are not happy, but this team is looking like complete bust, Lewis. Injuries everywhere, no offensive weapons to really show out. And I'm having a blast.
It's crazy that they were 3-1 at one point, and they were looking pretty solid in that stretch, but losing 5 games in a row to the Giants, the Lions, the Jets, and it's just been so ugly, so defeating. And yeah, you're right. I'm ecstatic. I love it. But for them, it's like, at what point are we? I think us two have transitioned from the point of, oh, they just need to figure it out. They'll eventually figure it out too. No, this is just a bad football team, and that's what we've been watching. Just a bad football team that has a really bad attitude about it because of the quarterback just being completely aloof and out of it. So I think, you are what your best player is, and they are just an arrogant team that thinks they can go on the field and outplay anybody, but they're undisciplined, they lack focus, and just bad attitudes in general, that whenever they go down in these games, it just feels like, okay, it's over. It's not that same, cocky Aaron Rodgers that you feel like can just will you any game in the regular season. Now it's just losing on the road to the 1-loss Lions. This team is dead, Laraib.
Yeah, and you look towards the future. A lot of questions about Aaron Rodgers this past offseason. Will he get traded? What sort of package can the Packers expect? And now, how do you feel about that, Lewis, going forward when he just hasn't looked like the same guy? He still had the back-to-back MVPs the past 2 seasons, but this year he's just looked completely terrible. And so, how do you think this Packers front office will feel about this moving forward? At least for the end of this season or the next couple seasons.
Well, I know for certain that the fans of Green Bay want him out of the building faster than anyone else does. Just seeing like the online reactions to trade him, get him out. But, that's a $50 million contract not very easy to move around. So there will be desperate teams out there. Trust me, there will be desperate teams out there like the Denver Broncos who will just throw something at a great quarterback and hopes that he will elevate their team. But it's going to be a really tough decision for this franchise. It might be like a Brett Favre situation. Maybe Zach Wilson doesn't pan out for the Jets, and the Jets have all this young talent. They have a ton of cap space. They're like, you know what? Win now, move. Let's go for Rodgers. Bring him back with Saleh, and he could, maybe rejuvenate himself in a new environment in New York with some better weapons. But right now in Green Bay, it's just this is a team that's been so successful for a long time. They've never been able to get over the hump ever since they won the Super Bowl 12 years ago. So I think, for the long term of this franchise, it's starting to look like you're going to have a good pick this year. Maybe, trading him, get some more draft capital, start over, get a young team, and have some promise. Because we know this is a team and a front office historically that does a really good job of moving on from quarterbacks and kind of getting that next one to just come in and be the franchise. Do I think that's Jordan Love? No. But maybe you get a Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, or a guy in the draft this year who supplants him. So personally, for me, I think this tenure is over. And if I'm, the Green Bay front office, I think this ship has sailed. I think it sailed at the end of last year, but it's hard to move off a guy like Rodgers. I get it, the talent is there, but he's never going to be happier. He's never going to feel better. He's going to get paid more, but that's not going to make him happier, as we know. So I think it's best for both parties that they move off of him, but the logistics behind that are very tough. But Laraib, a team that loves washed quarterbacks and might move for him, the Indianapolis Colts. And breaking news today, they fired their head coach, Frank Reich, after losing 26-3 to the New England Patriots on Sunday. This was not a real surprise for us. We knew, based off a lot of the decisions that this Colts franchise has made over the past few years, that his head was inevitably on the chopping block, Laraib. Talking about Frank Reich specifically, I'm going to start on this one. I think he's always been a really good head coach, and he's been put in impossible situations by this front office. Just, you like the idea of we have a talented team, we have a talented roster, a great running back, good offensive line, a good defense. We just need that quarterback to plug and play, like what the Bucs did with Tom Brady, like what the Rams do with Matt Stafford, and we'll become a Super Bowl team. However, they just have not gotten the right guys. They were in the bidding market for Tom Brady. They didn't get him. They were in the bidding market for Aaron Rodgers. They didn't get him. I don't know how interested they were in Russell Wilson, but they were interested in Stafford. I know that for sure. So it just seems like when you have all these different quarterbacks over the years just passing through, eventually this high-end talent that you have to attract these guys, they get older, they get more expensive, they get more injured prone. So it's hard to just maintain a roster and maintain expectations over all these years of indecision and indecisiveness. I think their biggest mistake was getting rid of Carson Wentz, but that's just me. I think you should have given him another season, not spent all this money on a Matt Ryan and all that draft capital. But Laura, what do you think about this Colts decision to move off Frank Reich?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. We both really liked him as a head coach. We haven't seen him be, the most amped up guy on the sidelines, but he's really calm and collected. He knows how to lead a young group of guys. And like you mentioned, they had a solid defense over the past couple of years led by Shaq Leonard. You had the great offensive line. You had the great running back. All you needed was a quarterback, but they just took way too long to acquire him. And then, I know you like Carson Wentz, but to bring him in and think he's going to be that guy to lead you to Super Bowl just wasn't a great idea. To bring in a washed up Matt Ryan from Atlanta when he didn't really look good last season and think he was going to be the guy to lead you this year obviously was not a good, good idea. And so just the decisions by this front office to bring in guys and just think that Frank Reich will be able to, string it all together and they'll get it done. It was just a terrible, terrible execution by them. And I know you have your own thoughts about Jim Irsay and what he's been doing over there for the past couple seasons and the decisions he's made. But, I still think Frank Reich is a solid head coach. Hopefully he'll find a job somewhere else as another head coach because we've seen him. He's a talented guy. He knows how to lead it. He knows how to lead an NFL franchise. And so, it sucks to see him go. But this Colts team is just going to be, poverty at least for the rest of the season. And we'll see what sort of draft pick that they get, Lewis. and hopefully they lean quarterback in this year's draft class.
Well, my hope is that they finally ditch this stupid rental quarterback idea. Even though, like we just talked about, Aaron Rodgers might be on the market, I think it's time to finally scrap it this season. Just buy into the tank, get one of these stud young quarterbacks that are coming up in the draft, and build around him. Because obviously the situation with Andrew Luck was awful, but that's when you found like the most hope and the most success for this team was building around that young quarterback. All, just having him succeed. And, you did him wrong. That wasn't really Frank Reich's fault. That was more of the front office not getting that team around him. Can you just imagine if Andrew Luck was still around? I mean, gosh, this team would be the cream of the crop of the AFC right now. But that's all what if, shoulda, coulda, woulda at this point. So I think for the Colts, their best move going forward, tank the rest of the season, invest in a young quarterback, build around him, and see what you have. Let another team buy out Aaron Rodgers. Let another team go through that experience. You need to focus on yourself, this whole building. But like you said, a guy like Jim Irsay, with the pride he has, I don't think he can do that. So we'll see what they do coming up this offseason. But, Laraib, I think that the Colts are going to fit into our next segment here. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, as we will now, we're 9 weeks in, we're halfway through the season, and we've been talking about kind of in the beginning of these episodes, we're starting to see the direction of certain teams through the season of who's going up to the top, who's falling to the bottom. You're starting to kind of see that divide halfway through the season of who's a real contender and who's a pretender, and you have your middle ground. So, Laraib, we're going to cross off 8 teams. We're going to alternate one team, and obviously, we're going to get the easy ones out of the way. Maybe give some of these teams their last chance to shine on our podcast, because we're not going to be talking about them much more after this. But we'll go back and forth. I'll let you start with the first one, because I feel like I know where you're going, and it hits a little close to home.